Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for taking time out of a busy Wednesday afternoon to join us on this live API attack simulation done by our CTO Karthik Krishnamoorthy and our VP of Products Vivek. So I'm Funny, your moderator today. A few housekeeping notes. So there will be a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Should you have any questions during the webinar, please feel free to type in, and then we'll get to them at the end of the webinar. The second, to keep the whole simulation interactive, we have a few poll questions open throughout the presentation. So please participate in them, and our panelists will discuss the results today. Okay, so first, about Indusface. So we are an application security firm with over 150 employees and 5 offices across India. So we have 5,000 plus customers across 95 countries globally. So we are fast growing, profitable, and backed by institutional investors. Now coming to our application security platform. So we have 3 principal product lines. For application protection, we have a WAAP platform called Aptrana. For application scanning or VAPT, we have a platform called Indusface VAS. And then we are also the distributor of SSL certificates for Entrust in India. Now, coming to compliance and certifications, no matter which geography you're in, which industry you're in, we have all of this covered. And if you choose to go for VAPT or penetration testing through us, that will be done by certain certified auditors that we have on our team. Over the years, we've had many recognitions. One recognition that we are extremely proud of is our Gartner Peer Insights Customer Choice Badge. So we've been rated in the top right of the quadrant here, and this is after Gartner evaluated tens of vendors in the WAAP market. We've already discussed this before. This is just a map showing where all our customers are. And no matter which industry you're in or which size your company is, we have a representative customer here. So this is just a representative list. So we have many more. Now, every quarter we do a research on all the attacks that get blocked on a sample set of 1400 web and API applications. So this research, we publish it quarterly. And, if you are curious of what the insights are, please feel free to download the report on our website. So we'll share the deck with you after the webinar. You have the direct link on this slide. Please click and download. The same research has been covered in the Hindu Business Line and Business Standard in the last 1 month. Now, without further ado, let me introduce our speakers today. So we have Karthik Krishnamoorthy, who is our CTO. He has close to 3 decades of experience leading large engineering teams in the security space. So he leads the whole engineering team that is behind our WAAP product Aptrana and our DAST or VAPT product Indusface VAS. Prior to this, he led many security engineering teams at security firms including Intel Security and Trend Micro. Now joining him, we have Vivek Gopalan, who is the VP of Products in Indusface. He is the one who is responsible for the product roadmap for both of these products that we have. He has close to 15 years of experience, a majority of it in the security space. Prior to doing application security at Indusface, he worked with Dhruva. So with that, I'll hand it over to you, Vivek. Vivek?
Yeah. Hey, Funny, thanks for the introduction. Can you stop sharing so that I can get the... Yeah, thank you. Okay. Okay, thanks everyone. Thanks everyone for joining in. Let me get started. So as part of today's webinar, we are going to talk about attack simulations on API. Before getting into the crux of it, I want to give you quick context around why this topic is very important, right? Over the years, what we have seen is a rapid explosion of APIs. And the reason why these APIs are exploding is twofold. One is because of evolution of the architecture, how applications are developed with the evolution of microservice architectures. Various services, applications are no more monolithic. They are broken down into various services, and these services communicate with each other using APIs. Secondly, the APIs are also creating a new economy where APIs are driving its own business models, where organizations are exposing APIs which are consumed by third party, by the end users or their clients, which eventually means that more and more the traffic which we see on internet are API driven, and there is nearly a 70% growth in APIs year on year. Even recently, Gartner has suggested that more and more as WAAP decisions are made by consumers, they will look at API security as a key decision-making criteria before deciding what they need to do. So why this is happening, right? With the API explosion, what is happening is that APIs have become a core focus for attackers. This is a new threat vector, and what attackers are believing is that this new threat vector is ripe to be exploited. And a major reason why this is happening is because of the lack of awareness around API security. There is a lot of confusion in the industry around what is needed as part of API security. There is confusion around whether the management layers that we have around API gateways, is it enough when it comes to API security, or is there anything more that is required? And all these gray areas is resulting creating APIs being a more ripe vector which could be exploited by hackers. And this has resulted in a huge explosion of attacks, essentially using the APIs. And as you could see, these are the attacks that has happened over the last 2 years, and majorly focusing on the APIs. And you could see that no major brands have spared. Twitter had an API exploit on because one of the APIs were vulnerable, resulting in exposure of a lot of the PII data of usernames and passwords, usernames and email IDs. Similarly, Dropbox had an similar breach where due to the breach, the GitHub repository was exposed, which resulted in a lot of the API keys being exposed, which in turn resulted in a lot of user data being exposed, right? So that's kind of the magnitude that we are seeing. And not even the financial industries were spared. GitHub is a cryptocurrency wallet, and they saw an explosion of APIs where some of their APIs were compromised, which resulted in the API wallets being compromised and the cryptocurrencies being stolen. Equifax was similarly being exploited here, and there was a vulnerability in their APIs, which was again exploited, resulting in millions of user data being exposed. This eventually resulted in a huge fine on the company. So as you can see, APIs has become a very common attack vector that is being exploited by the hackers, and this is creating a huge havoc in the industry. So before going into it, we have our first poll question. which is essentially getting your pulse on what is a major concern area when it comes to APIs. So the poll is open. I think we'll keep the poll open for next 30 seconds. Please answer the poll. That will help us understand where you stand. We'll give another 10 seconds. Okay, we'll close the polls now. We publish result. Okay, we have an even split where I think most of you are saying that some are DDoS, some are bot, but kind of all these vectors are kind of something that you are worried about, which is fair because any of these vectors can be exploited by the hackers to compromise your organization. So let me, as I said, one of the gray areas in this space is the API gateways. Many people believe that because they have API gateways, they are secure. And I just wanted to take a couple of minutes to talk about this, right? As an security practitioner, I believe that API gateways do provide a complementary solution. It does help you in the API management. API gateway is essentially a reverse proxy, right? Which acts as a mediator between your end clients and your clients and your end servers. So all your requests goes through API. API helps in routing. It helps in API lifecycle management and the other things. But when it comes to security, it is not complete, right? API gateways have some security features inbuilt as part of it, but there are various gaps. At this point, I would want to pull in Karthik, who is a CTO, and throw the questions to him. So Karthik, what do you think about API gateway and about the security features that is available as part of API gateway, and how do you think as security practitioners they should approach this space?
Yeah, thanks, Vivek. So that's a good question because firstly, one thing to understand right off the bat is what is an API gateway actually doing, or what was it built for? An API gateway actually was meant to allow clients to access services. To access services means access services as an API. It's meant to handle versioning of APIs. So as you move from older to newer APIs, it'll work. It's meant to marshal an API into multiple backend services and things like that, right? This is what an API gateway provides you. It provides a way to document, provides a way to control your APIs, and these kind of things. So it is not primarily a security product. It is primarily an API management product. So there is a different purpose for which it is built. Of course, like in almost anything else or any other product, including security, there is some overlap between different products, right? People move this way or the other. But this is where I will primarily draw the distinction between a gateway and a security service. And there are specific things that security devices do very well, which API gateways will find it difficult to do. So if I look at this, like this table is actually giving a comparison of some of the typical features that are found by that are provided by a security platform like us, which is a web application and API protection product. So authorization, API authorization kind of an API gateway will do very well. But as you go down the list and towards the more towards the bottom part of the tables, right, it gets more and more difficult for an API gateway to provide these things. API discovery, for example, right, They could do in some senses. Typically, they expect it to be imported and already told to them. On a web application kind of stuff, since we look at all traffic, for us, we can build a discovery around it easier, right? Positive security, again, API gateway, if it knows enough about the APIs, it would be able to provide some level of this thing. So will we. But as you go down the list, certain things it's almost impossible for an API gateway to do, like DDoS protection, like even for some other things, right? That where there will be some protection in the OWASP top 10 or something like that, right? API gateways might have some protection, but the web application API protection, WAAP products like us will have a lot of protection. I mean, this is what we do, right? This is our core strength. This is our core product. So this is what we focus on security, on blocking attacks and things like that, right? So ditto for 0-day, ditto for DDoS, bot mitigation, even things where there is some level of protection that might be built in, against say, dictionary attacks for this thing, right? We will be checking this often and updating it frequently. We will be checking different ways. A new attack comes out on a thing where a particular encoding is being abused. We will take care of that because this is what we constantly do. And that again, API gateways, obviously, right? You have a lot of them out there. And some may be better, some may be almost zero protection kind of stuff. But this is the thing for us. This is our full-time job. This is what we do, right? So this is the primary distinction I make, that we are security focused. They are API management focused, right? That's the primary distinction. That being said, of course, we've been doing this for a long time and moving this along. So Vivek, I'd like to ask you to continue along to say not just what we do, which we know and we've talked about before, but also what's coming down the road, right? Where are we taking API protection in the WAAP?
Thanks, Karthik. I think it's you summarized it well, right? That API gateway though is a complementary solution, and it does some part of the security. You need a more API security focused solution that can be more comprehensive. And Aptrana is one such solution where we are very proud to say that we provide the most comprehensive solution in the market around API security, where we start from discovery of APIs, where one of the biggest problems that we hear from a lot of our customers is that, hey, I'm not aware of what are the APIs that my organizations have. And this is very common, right? Because APIs are now being built across various teams. It is built for various purposes. Marketing team will be exposing some APIs. Your dev team would be exposing some APIs. So there are explosion of APIs, and because there are APIs being exposed or consumed, as a security practitioner, it is becoming very hard for them to know what are the APIs that is exposed, so that they can protect against those. So in Aptrana, what we do is from the traffic that is coming to your web servers or your application servers, we are able to discover the APIs. We are able to identify what are the APIs that are there and give you a complete list of APIs. And how this helps is it helps you avoid the risk of shadow APIs, rogue APIs, and the likes. But we don't stop there, obviously, right? Once the APIs are discovered, we also automatically create a positive security model from the APIs. We create the API definitions using we create API definitions, and using these API definitions, the positive security models are automatically created, which helps you give you a more accurate and comprehensive protection. The positive security model is also complemented by the negative security model where we have API specific rules built around the OWASP top 10 API threads that has been published, and that also helps you protect those APIs. And the major USP that we bring to the table is the scanning part of it. We are the only vendor which provides a risk-based approach to APIs, where we also bundle in our API scanner, which will help you identify the vulnerabilities that are that are exposed as part of your APIs. And we give you a comprehensive view on how these vulnerabilities are protected by the WAAP. So we give a clear view into how many of these vulnerabilities are automatically protected by our WAF layers, what is protected by a positive security model, what is protected by a negative security model. And if some of these are not protected, we also give a clear view on to whether it can be protected using custom rules, where our security experts would write those custom rules for you, or whether it needs to be fixed at the core level. All these things comprehensively provides a more comprehensive solution as part of API security. And we are not stopping here. As Karthik mentioned, we have a huge vision around this, right? This is going to be further build on top of, we are going to further build on top of this classifications, where we could classify these APIs based on the sensitivity of the APIs, how these APIs being used, which will help the end users, which will help the security practitioners decide how the security postures should be governed for these APIs. We'll be adding further threat intelligence into these modules, which will help further enhance the API security posture. With that, let's see. Okay, before that, there's one more slide where I would want to talk about how all these things work in practice, right? So, without a WAAP layer, what happens is your APIs are exposed. End users will directly hit your API servers, and any API request will go directly to your API server, which eventually means that if there are attacks happening, that can happen directly on the APIs and data can get breached. When WAAP is in layer, V becomes a reverse proxy here, where all the requests to your API server is being monitored, and we have both positive and negative security model, which will eventually inspect each of these API requests and decide which needs to be allowed and which needs to be blocked. If there's an API gateway, the API gateway would fall before this, where API gateways would forward the traffic to WAAP, or the WAAP could be before that, and the API gateway could be behind it, right? When it comes to DDoS protection and the likes, we would recommend WAAP to be in front and then the API gateway. Now, with that, let's see all this in action, right? We had promised an attack simulation as part of this webinar, and that's what we will do in the next 10 to 15 minutes. So, Karthik, over to you.
Cool, thank you.
I'm going to just stop sharing, so you can.
Oh, sorry, yeah. Okay,
yeah.
I couldn't do it yet. Let me try again. I'm going to share my desktop. Okay. I guess you guys can see the screen now?
Yes. Good.
Very good. Okay. And so these are the three attacks that I'll be showing today. A vulnerability exploit, account takeover, and a DDoS attack, right? Let me just go right to it and start showing you what. 1 second. Sorry, I just have to move these things slightly because the Zoom windows are in the way. Okay. So let's start off with a simple attack, right? A simple attack, as in, you wouldn't think it's API specific, but it is. Although the point of these things is not that the attack is simple or not, right? The attack in reality is as complicated as it gets, depending on the API and the sequence you use to get to it. But the point is that just because you move to API doesn't mean that certain older threats haven't gone away. So one of the first things I'm going to be trying to do here is showing what happens on this thing. So what I have set up actually is two servers. I have a server which is unprotected and a server which is protected, which is behind WAF, right? Two different servers, identical software running on both the servers, but one is behind WAF, one is not. So I'm going to launch a simple, straightforward this thing in this case, and you will see that this is a SQL injection attack, which if you see it, you can see that the username actually had a SQL injection or 1=1 kind of an attack, right? And of course, this is an unprotected API server, so it actually went through quite easily. I also have the exact same this. I mean, with this, I have an authorization token. I can now use it to do stuff as admin and things like that. If I do the same thing on the server that is protected by WAF, you will see that we block it. 406 is what the Indusface server returns. It's not the Nginx server, the application server. The web application, our WAP solution, the Indusface WAP solution, has intercepted the request and has noticed that this looks like an attack, and we have blocked the attack. So it doesn't hit the web server at all, or it doesn't hit the API server at all, right? So that is the thing. So the point of this wasn't to look at the specific attack or something, right? The point here was to actually say that even in the API world, some traditional attacks still make sense. Same protection still makes sense, right? So all the effort that we spent in years learning how to protect web applications, a lot of that still applies here. Okay, moving along. The next thing is account takeover attack. So if I look at account takeover attack, what is an account takeover, right? Account takeover is a way to guess. I mean, one of the ways to do account takeover is to actually guess at what the credentials are and find a credential that works. So this is the thing. So it's, I mean, one way is like brute forcing, right? So if there's not much protection on the application server, you can actually keep on trying a bunch of attacks from dictionaries. Where do you get these dictionaries? It's easy enough, honestly, to get dictionaries here. Because it's available through various attacks, various exports. People are this thing, they are sold on the dark web. So there's constant breaches happening all the time, and there is this thing. So we've taken a small thing here. I mean, this one has 180,000 odd credentials, and we will we'll run this again on the unprotected server, and it will try to obviously guess at the thing by calling the login API with these different username password combinations based on this file, right? So it's going to try a whole bunch of things, and well, you can see of us at 125 level, it did find one that works, right? Jay Smith's password has been leaked. Now, this 125 could easily have been 125,000, because it doesn't take time for the machine to try all sorts of combinations if the backend server does not have protection, right? So in this case, obviously there is no protection. We could just keep guessing until we get the thing, right? Or there could be a limit, but it's very high before the server reacts to it. Now, if we do the same thing on the WAF server, the server that's running behind WAF, what happens is that it sees that, okay, look, you're trying too much, and after that, because you've tried too many things, it's time for me to start blocking it, right? And of course, the script says that, okay, looks like you have protection, we're just going to abandon it because I'm getting too many 406s, right? So I've been blocked by so many things, and we are exiting kind of stuff, right? So this is how, again, our solution can actually protect you from these kind of things, like typical credential stuffing, guessing kind of attacks, right? Is something that we can block, and many other such attacks, right? So account takeover, this is another very typical thing for the API, right? Because among other things, it's very difficult for an API to add protections like capture, right? It doesn't make sense there. So you have to have other protection in place to handle this. Now, the final attack that I want to show you here, right, is a DDoS attack. So what we're going to do is we are actually using K6 itself to run. The K6 is actually a load testing tool. It's not specifically an attacking DDoS tool. We should make that clear. It's a nice tool used to stress test your servers and APIs and services and things like that. So I'm going to be running it on the server which is not behind WAF, and at a certain threshold, whether it is 8,000 or 10,000, 12,000, 50,000, it will start misbehaving the server. It will actually this thing, and the attack continues long enough, you can actually bring it down itself. And we'll verify that by running simple APIs against the thing to see whether it is alive or not, kind of stuff, right? So let me go to that and just run this thing, right? So I mean, this 5 minutes doesn't matter. You could just leave it on forever. The idea is how long you leave it till the server goes down, kind of stuff, right? So let me run this against the open server. And after a point, you'll start seeing errors. Let me, in the meantime, just keep checking what's happening here. And already you start seeing errors here. And if you paste it here, this guy is going to be dying, right? The server is not able to handle this level of request. I should probably stop it because it's, server must be rebooting. There'll be some health check kicking in that will restart the server, etc., kind of stuff, right? So it's bad gateway. You can see the gateways. I mean, it's the server has been host in this case, right? Completely down, right? In the case of the server protected by a solution like ours, which is we will be able to handle attacks and stuff like that, right? In these kind of volume attacks. So I'll run the exact same attack. Only difference is the server is going through WAF, and because of that, obviously credentials have to change because they're different servers. So let me run the same kind of attack here, and while I'm doing that, I will also be checking how the server is behaving, right? And you can see it's happily chugging along here, right? Because this IP it doesn't show up here until you have to wait for the whole thing to get over before you see how many requests are blocked or whatever, right? It gives stats at the end, but a lot of requests are being blocked. Our WAF protection is kicking blocked, which is why the server from other IPs are working out quite happily and the APIs are working. I can stop this. It doesn't really this thing, right? So this kind of shows that this kind of stuff, right? Rate limiting kind of stuff. This is what we've been doing. This we as in web application protection, we've been doing it for a long time. So we know how to do this kind of stuff. We also know how to handle a whole bunch of other attacks. Like I said, right, the SQL injection attack is not, there is a difference in the API. You have to handle JSON encoding, you have to handle API, the way the return is, the protections is different. There are various things that will have to change, but security as a whole, a lot of it is also same, right? There is differences, there are specific things and all, but a lot of things is also the same, right? Including things like protection for DDoS attacks and things like that. Let me just stop it there. And yeah, Vivek, I can turn it back to you to go to. So once again, I should stop sharing, right? So
yeah, sure.
Then you can take the thing. Yeah.
Thanks, Karthik. Thanks for that wonderful presentation and wonderful demo around how attacks happen. And as Karthik pointed out, right, this thing around how these attacks are happening. The major part that we are good at is the security part, right? This is our core competency, and so we would be able to do it a lot better than any other alternate or complementary solutions in this space. For example, I mean, API the account takeover attack, which Karthik did talk about, some of this would have been also protected by API gateways. That we are not denying. But when it comes to a vulnerability exploit, right, when there is a targeted attack on based on some vulnerabilities that are there, we are very, very well placed to protect against those, whereas API gateway would not be able to protect against it. Similarly, around DDoS attacks, right? Yes, API gateway might be able to scale and do certain kind of have certain kind of rate limits and those things. But when it comes to sophisticated attacks, when it comes to sophisticated distributed attacks, we are very well equipped to protect against those. We have been doing it for years, and we'll be able to do a great job around that, right? So I would want to give you a quick overview on our portal. So Karthik was attacking the sites. One of the sites which was protected was this site, right? So this is a site which is protected behind Aptana, and this was the site that he was protecting. He was attacking at, and the protection was happening. All these attacks are blocked at Aptana, and you will see all the details of those blocks in the Aptana portal. As I said, we start with discovery, and then we identify vulnerabilities that are there in the application. We say how they are, what are the vulnerable APIs, and how the protection is working for those APIs. Right? So this is a core piece that we bring to our, and this is the biggest USP that we bring to our table. And once the protection starts, you will see various stats around how the protection is working, which are the IPs. I think this was the IP from which Karthik was launching his attacks. How are the protection working? Which were the categories of rules? So the DDoS kicked in, positive security policy kicked in when SQL injection kind of attacks were tried. Bot policies kicked in when account takeover attacks were taking place. So that's kind of the breadth of protection that we bring to our table. Uh, there are various DDoS bot policies. In the interest of time, I would not go into this, but we have other webinars where I have talked in detail about these things. One thing that I would do want to highlight is the API security policies. So I did say in the beginning, right? So we discovered the APIs. So the APIs that are discovered, then automatically we create the positive security policies for those, and those positive security policies can be enabled and disabled at will, depending on the customer's need. This eventually gives a comprehensive protection to our customers around APIs. And not only that, we also give you the Swagger definition. So you could download those and tweak it if you need it and upload it, or use it for your internal testing purposes also. So with that, we are nearing the end of the presentation. Before we go into the details of our Aptana WAAP and what other features we provide, I want you to want to open a quick poll question whether you are interested about a free trial in Aptana. So we're opening the poll now.
Yeah, so I guess we can keep the poll open, Vivek, and we
Okay.
have a bunch of questions, so we'll start taking them.
Yeah, sure. I think in the interest of let's do that.
Okay. So the first question, which platform is more attack prone? Cloud, mobile, web?
That's an interesting question, right? I think each of these platforms or each of these types of applications has its own threats, right? Even mobile applications has its own threats. When mobile applications communicate to mobile servers, there is a threat. Web applications have threats, and also cloud, right? Now, more and more, what we are seeing in the context of this webinar is that all these applications are using APIs, and APIs is evolving as a bigger threat vector. So web applications do continue to have its own risks, and you need to continue to concentrate on those. But also now start focusing on how is APIs being used in your organization. Whether these applications, you might have a web application and that might be protected, but that web application might be calling an API. Now, is those APIs being protected? How are you handling protection for those? Are there any APIs that are exposed for consumption of third-party clients? How is those APIs being protected? So those are the things that we would recommend you to look at also.
And also, Vivek, to add to that, I think hackers are running more and more probes, right?
Yes.
So they look at all your external attack surface and then target the weakest link.
I think, yeah, good point, Funny. I think one thing that attackers do nowadays is try and probe and understand what is your external attack surface, and then try and probe all these surfaces and see which is your weakest link. And in this context, we have also recently released our asset discovery module, where we would scan the entire organization's internet exposure and provide what are the assets that is exposed as part of the organization, which would then you could evaluate and then do risk assessment around those.
Yeah, so the next question is by Prakash. Any video link for more knowledge? I request you to give the topic on which you want the knowledge, and we'll email you the relevant videos. Then what all data will be captured at the time of API discovery?
Okay, So I'll answer a bit and then I'll hand it over to Karthik also. So as part of this, right? So we don't capture sensitive data. What we do is as we inspect this traffic inline, we would do whatever is needed to discover those APIs. But from the data perspective, what we won't store any sensitive data. What we will just store is the certain data, right? Like which is the IP from which the request is coming from, what is the API calls happening, certain other data around that. And then when for the discovery purpose, we do it inline, and we ensure that we are not storing any of those sensitive data as part of our API discovery. Karthik, I'll hand it over to you to talk about.
So no, I think just to build on your answer, I think you pretty much got the covered the correct this thing, right? This thing. All I would say is for the purposes of identifying the APIs, there will be data capture, there will be this thing, but nothing is stored. The whole idea is that machines, only machines and programs and processes will have access to any traffic that's going by. No human being can this thing, and it's not stored in persistent storage for any amount of time, right? So that it will not be stored, and by mistake the life cycle policy does not this thing, and that is not happening. We realize that a lot of these data is sensitive, and frankly we are also concerned about compliance and those kind of things, right? So the data is not stored for any long-term in any long-term basis.
Karthik, I think Karthik and Vivek, maybe the question is with respect to what data do we capture related to APIs? Maybe.
Right. So, I mean, high level, if you think
API?
about it, right? Yeah. One is to discover the APIs, which means the endpoints. Is it /API/login/ like those are the things, right? The second thing is the parameters. And from that, what the things that we've been talking about by the automated tools is to deduce the type and ranges and value, patterns of the parameters. So that is the data that will be captured and stored to discover the thing. So if you think about it in a very high level, we are looking at traffic and trying to make a Swagger spec, right? So, okay, so this is an API. It takes 3 parameters. This is a date. That is a login ID. That is that. But we will not store any kind of real data or customer data or website data for any amount of time that makes sense.
So next question, is there a concept of expirable APIs? If so, which cloud platform supports as of today?
Okay.
Yeah, Karthik. You have it.
Sorry. I'm just going to this thing, and maybe you can. So I'm not entirely sure what expirable APIs mean, but we do have the thing. I think in our idea, in our view of this, we have a concept of deprecated APIs. What that means is that you move to version 2. You can't really delete the version 1 API because there could still be old clients using it. And how do you know this? So we can deprecate it, and we will keep track of the fact that deprecated APIs have been called by this person from this IP, this country, this time, this blah, 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 right? And using that, you can decide. And at any point of time, if you want to say that, yeah, block this API from now on because it's not just deprecated, it is not meant to be called, we will we will be able to do that as well, right? So I think that is what, and maybe if that is what expirable API means, that kind of capabilities we do have.
So yeah, Funny, any other questions? Hello?
Funny, you might be muted. So.
Funny?
Hello? Yeah. So I was saying what type of attack you're using. So this one was asked during the account takeover demo that was showing. What type of attacks? I think it was credential stuffing, right?
Yes.
Yeah, pretty much. We're just like dictionary attacks. Yeah.
Essentially, it's a credential stuffing attack where we are iterating over various credentials and trying to see whether any of those credentials is getting you true to the APIs. So that's essentially what we are trying to do as part of that.
Yeah. So next question is, what is the latency? I think what is the processing delay that your WAAP layer introduces? Do you have any benchmarks on this?
So we add very minimal latency. Again, it is subjective, but generally, as part of our lab test, we don't add more than few milliseconds, right? So again, I want to be very clear on this. As a WAF, we don't add more than few milliseconds, and we have our WAF nodes across the world. So you when you onboard an application or your API server behind Aptrana, we will be onboarding it to the region which is closest to your backend server, which will eventually ensure that there is no additional latency because of the distance is added. But overall, end to end, it will be a couple of milliseconds. That's a few milliseconds. That's what.
Okay, so the next one, this platform is kind of SIEM. No, this is not a SIEM. So this is a WAP. So we send the attack logs into your SIEM. So we integrate into SIEMs. Do you have a partner program for MSP and MSSPs? Yes. We have a very detailed program where we've mapped out L1 support, L2 support, and all the detailed things. And we have many MSPs and MSSPs who are already our partners. So write to us at sales@indusface.com and we'll be more than happy to take you through our capabilities. And we've also built many functionalities, including multi-tenant platform and all that are important for MSPs and MSSPs. Vivek, you want to add anything?
No, I think you covered it well. Definitely, we have a strong partner program, and we have already multiple partners who are onboarded, who are white labeling our Aptrana solutions and providing to their end customers. And the best part about this is our entire solution is a managed service solution. So we do the heavy lifting from the managed perspective. So as an MSP, you would be able to provide an MSP service to your end customers without too much of an overhead.
Yeah. So the next question is, can you describe one hypothetical scenario of a ransomware attack which could potentially involve traversing through an API? How will your solution help towards detection prevention?
See, again, ransomware attacks and all those things, right? So what does ransomware eventually mean, right? Ransomware is essentially having an exploit and having got hold of some sensitive data, or they know that they can bring down your server and now keeping you in check, or keeping you under ransom, saying that, hey, if you don't pay this ransom, then I will probably expose the sensitive data, or I will bring down your server. So these are the things that we generally what is called as a ransomware. And generally, why is it called ransomware? Is generally it is done using a malware exploits and those things, right? So when it comes to API exploits and how ransomware would play out, one hypothetical scenario is what happened, say, for we were talking about for Dropbox, right? So they had got hold of the GitHub repository, and exploiting their APIs and how the APIs were there, they were able to get hold of the repository. Now, if they were able to exploit those APIs and get hold of the repository, download the repository, now the entire company is at risk. Now they can say, hey, if you don't pay me this ransom, then I would expose all your codes, I will expose all your API keys, all those things, right? So that's eventually the catastrophe that can happen. Now, this exploit, at the first place, why did it happen? Because there was a vulnerability in the APIs, which was being exploited. With WAP in picture, we would be able to prevent these attacks, right? When somebody is probing and trying to exploit these vulnerabilities, we will be in line to that traffic, inspect those traffic, and block those traffic, which eventually means that that eventual exploit would have not been succeeded, which eventually means that you would not be under ransom risk. I hope that gives an answer to the hypothetical question. But obviously, the premise which I'm coming from is, if your APIs are protected and cannot be exploited, then you are secure and nobody can hold you on ransom.
Yeah, so the next question, what advantage does Aptana have over a standard API installation such as cPanel running config server firewall configured properly and software with protection such as SQL injection protection built in?
Good question. I mean, you have a standard WAF solution or inbuilt WAF solution in place, and what does Aptana bring into it, right? What Aptana brings into picture is the security expertise. WAF by itself is a complex beast, right? Fine tuning the rules is complex. That the biggest problem in the WAF space is FPs, which is false positives, where you should what we mean by that is you should not end up blocking legitimate users. If you block legitimate users, that is false positive. So you need to fine tune the rules in such a way that legitimate request goes through, but actual attacks are blocked. All these things are done by Aptana. We as a managed service, we write the rules for you. We manage the rules. We ensure that there is no false positives around it. So that's the biggest differentiator that we bring to the table. Apart from that, we have our disk-based protection database, which I highlighted, where we identify the vulnerabilities, we show how those vulnerabilities are protected, and if not, we write the custom rules for you. Again, that's not something that you will get. And obviously, on top of it, we have our sophisticated behavioral DDoS protection, bot protection, and the likes, which again, you would not get. And finally, last but not least, the complete monitoring aspect of it and the managed service that we have built around on top of it. That's again something that you would not get.
So the next question, how is an injection attack handled by WAAP?
I mean, if I were to just jump in, I mean, that's kind of like what we showed, right? It's a matter of looking at the parameter, and how does WAF block it? Actually, we have multiple layers of things, right? We can block directly based on the parameter being tampered with. If it comes up, we can also block based on the fact that this is coming from different bots or different maybe bad reputed IPs. We can also block based on that. So there are multiple layers of protection, which is what security should be all about, right? So not just SQL injection, but not just SQL and other kinds of injections. A lot of other things will be blocked by WAF in terms of rules as well as overall other kind of protection that we bring in.
So the next question, I think this is for our managed services capability, which is, what are the immediate steps to be taken post-attack? How does your organization support to overcome the same? Incidentally, on the same topic, one of our founders had done a podcast. We call it Sastrana. So it's an informative one with a global CISO. So once you hear the answer, also look at, what he's been doing over the years after an attack, because an attack is not if but when, right? So
right. Okay. So with there are two scenarios, right? Here I would look at it from two perspectives. One is you do not have a solution and now you are under attack, and where you're coming to us, what will we do? What we will do is immediately onboard you behind Aptana. The protection will start from day zero. We will ensure that all the rules are fine-tuned to ensure that removing the false positives and the likes, and fine-tune the rules, and depending on what is the attack, if there are any custom modification that is done that is needed, we would write those policies and ensure that the attacks are thwarted. The biggest part about us is that the managed service piece, where we work with the customer. We act as an extended security arm of the customer's team and ensure that all their application security needs are taken care of. Now, if you are an existing customer and the attacks are happening, how does that play out? Right? If you're an existing customer and attacks are happening, there are multiple things that happen. One, obviously, the immediate protections do kick in. Apart from that, if there are attacks are of anomalous in nature, if it is beyond the normal trends of attacks that we are seeing, automatic alerts goes to our managed service team, who immediately look at how is the attacks behaving, right? And what is happening, what is the attack behavior? Is there any different patterns and that is emerging, which would eventually then be passed on to our signature labs team, who would also look at it and then provide further recommendations to your team to say what additional policies or what additional actions that needs to be taken to ensure that you are safe. Not only that, obviously, we have SIM integrations and other things. So as these attacks happen, these logs are sent in real time to your SIM, where if in your SIM, if you have configured various other correlations across various other tools, you could take these events and based on that decide what other additional controls that you need to apply on other security control tools that you have, may essentially leading your way to XIDR and those things.
So the next question is about, again, implementation. Can Aptrana be added as a plugin instead of separate layer? And then, or a related question, which is, can we deploy it on our cloud or data center, or are we restricted to what we offer?
So no, we are a completely SaaS solution. So you would not be able to deploy Aptrana in your on-premise solution otherwise. But the good part is Aptrana is agnostic whether your application is on-premise cloud or on a private cloud or anywhere. All you have to do is route your traffic through our SaaS infrastructure, and we will ensure that all the protection happens, and we'll route the traffic to your backend. To the other point, no, we do not provide it as an plug and play or plugins like that. It is more an inline reverse proxy where you have to route the traffic through our infrastructure for protection to kick in.
Okay, so the next question, so there was a question on have they simulated attacks on the dashboard? So we will reach out to you for a demo. We'll show you how the logged attacks show up on the portal. It will be a detailed demo that way. And then what is the licensing policy for APIs? It is on API hosts. How many API hosts you have? For websites, it will be on the domains, subdomains, and applications. And on top of that, there will be bandwidth. So whatever bandwidth our WAAP processes will, for both request and response, there will be a charge for that. Then next question, can the API withstand a time travel attack where an attacker manipulates the system clock to exploit vulnerabilities related to time-based events like token expiration, session timeouts, or time-sensitive transactions?
Karthik, you want to take this?
Yeah, I mean, let me just say this. So one thing is, definitely tokens and cookies and stuff that we issue. It's you cannot manipulate it no matter what you do, because it all depends on how the timeouts are set, right? You don't say expires at the future. You actually say issued time and this thing. We are running on the cloud, so our time is synced. It's the cloud data center using its clocks are very reliable, right? They make sure that it's on time and everything kind of stuff. So with the cloud part of it, the system clock can be manipulated, at least through at this high level kind of attacks, right? So the incoming request anyway, it's always assumed to be under the control of the attacker, and anything can be changed. If the application itself has inside some parameter encoding time data and it's vulnerable, that is something that unless it's specifically told that how the application is behaving, is difficult for any protection to automatically protect against it, because you'll never know what is the time field. So can the API withstand a time-tail attack? It will probably depend on the API. In terms of tokens and other things, we will be able to, obviously, we wouldn't allow something that expires whatever, right, past, future, all those things we'll be able to handle. I hope I've understood that question correctly.
We are well past the time. We have about 14 open questions. So what we'll do is we'll have our solutions team reach out to you individually, and then thank you so much once again for joining today's session. It was very interactive, and keep looking for these webinars and reports. We do them pretty frequently, at least once a month. And have a great rest of the week and take care. Bye-bye.